like it's there. I think it is. Right? The same
Okay,
exact
wait.
time.
So knight h6, g takes h6, rook takes e4, maybe.
Let's start with rook takes e4. It feels more forcing. So rook
Right.
takes e4. How are you going to take back?
If you take back with the pawn, I suppose there will just be knight h6 and then even queen to f6. So maybe rook takes d4 instead
And
in
then
order to
knight
potentially play d4.
and then
Oh,
knight f6 because after pawn takes, queen takes, I'm threatening checkmate and I'm threatening your
rook.
rook here. That looks devastating. I think we might see this. This actually looks like a big blunder, and we have the evaluation bar there saying, "Wait a sec, White is just huge advantage, and it has to be surrounding this rook sacrifice for the knight and the knight sacrifice." And Nemo, both of our sirens, they're going off in our head like there's got to be something. We were just
Yeah,
looking at 96 check, and it looks like this should do the trick.
definitely. There's definitely something here, you know? And it's just all about these checks and captures and threats. So if you're listening in and you're wondering, how do I even find these moves so quickly while I'm playing a game? Well, always look for your checks and captures and threats.
And it seems that we're also live now on twitch.tv/chess. So welcome everybody. If you're coming from PogChamps, we're happy that you're here. This is the FIDE World Corporate Championship. We're in the midst of this. It's going to be a good time. So glad you could join us. And look at that. Step one complete. Rook takes e4. And this could be huge for the team from PT because this American Express squad is very powerful. And if you can take down Carissa Yip, you have a good chance of winning the match.
Yeah, and once again, for those who are new to the event, the FIDE Online World Corporate Chess Championship is an event sponsored by both FIDE and of course Chess.com. And we're here just looking at all these teams, putting together some very, very strong players. Some are employees, some are also free agents. So do keep that in mind as well when following the players.
Yeah, each team is allowed one free agent, and the teams can have only one player rated over 2,500. So Magnus Carlsen was playing, Anish Giri was playing, but you could just stack your team with a bunch of grandmasters. And whoa, this looks bad. So knight f6 check, maybe the king runs away, still looks bad. Knight h6 check, also tempting. And Nemo, we've had these situations before where you have a win and then you make the wrong choice. It seems that yes, Grandmaster Ali made the right choice, and this king is going down.
Yeah, and just to keep in mind, if you do play knight f6 first, the king can simply move out of the way. Your queen is under attack, so it will not hold the same amount of power as knight to h6.
That's right. I mean, let's say knight f6 check, the king comes to f8, you take on h7. The problem is you can't even start running away here because there's this bishop f6 check, beautiful move, and the king cannot run away. If you take the queen takes pawn, that's checkmate. So you have too much firepower to allow that king to escape. So after knight 6 check, I think Carissa is just losing. I mean, the bar says mate in 9. It's forced checkmate.
Made in 9. It's Carissa has been having a slightly rough event. We did actually see her lose her game last night in a very, very beautiful fashion, of course, but still, she is coming back from a loss already last night. So let's see how she will do today.
Yeah, it could be a two in a row. Was that the third round? It might have been. And yeah, this looks like
Mhm.
American Express struggling here. I'm going to keep an eye out. Perhaps she'll just resign. She's letting her clock tick, and I want to see the game played out to checkmate. But if she's just kind of stalling here just because she knows the defeat is inevitable, and honestly, it can give your team some confidence if they don't know the result yet. Because sometimes you see that your next board is losing, but that's different than knowing that you're down a point on the scoreboard. So I think that sometimes you just play on for the sake of the team, whereas you resign in an individual game.
You
And
know what would be really beautiful here?
what's that? It's kind of smothered mate.
Oh, Queen f6.
Oh my gosh, Queen of Six is amazing. Oh my gosh, you take and bishop takes is checkmate. Let's see if that's going to happen. That is a wonderful move.
That would be a move for a textbook. Honestly, there is smoother made here. You know, there's knight to there's queen takes f7 and
And just take
just
the
going for that. But I think queen f6 is even prettier because it's just an unexpected style of checkmate. But both do work.
here it comes. Here it comes. Oh, this is a smother checkmate. This is
All right, this one needs to go into a tactics book somewhere.
I don't know if there's a best game prize, but I will nominate this game thus far because we've seen plenty of good games. That's a smothered checkmate with the queen sack. king is caught in the corner, and that is no good for American Express. Let's take a look at some of these other boards. Mark Ginsburg, well, he had the upper hand, we thought earlier. Now it's anybody's game, but black's up a pawn and also the one on the attack.
Yeah. And for those of you who are not that familiar with checkmating patterns in chess, there are actually a lot of different checkmating patterns. Smothermate is simply one of them and is characterized by using the queen and knight with the king in the corner of the board. So do make sure you're keeping that one in mind.
That's right. And that was a beautiful finish for International Master Ali. And here we see that Ginsburg, down upon, do not trade rooks, everybody. When you're down material, you try not to trade. When you're, rook 8, no, rook a5 would double your own pawn. So that was actually pretty tricky move because I'm still in that mindset of, hey, let me try to trade. But just to show that quickly, if you play rook a5 and then we get the capture, this is not really an extra pawn in the same way this pawn being on the b file. It gives white more chances to hold, except for the fact that the black king is so quick. So that just makes your life harder. And that's why a5 was played. And I think we'll see this pawn push, and the black king will enter.
Yeah, I mean, this position is going to be very difficult for white to hold. However, we do have to keep in mind that rook and pawn endgames are often a draw because they do get misplayed quite easily. You can make one wrong move, and all of a sudden, you're going from winning to a draw.
That's right. And I'm going to quickly go over to another game, Nemo, if that's cool, because we see that we looked earlier and Bogdan took that pawn on f7. And what defense from Oksana Golubeva for the Farber group had to be a win, right? You took that pawn on f7 out of the opening thanks to the trick. And now, wait, there could be a7 check. If you go king 8, there would be king a6. Like it can get close, but the king should go up to b7 to make sure that the enemy king doesn't walk in. King b7, there it is. And now, if the knight moves, the a7 pawn drops. Otherwise, you just make sure you can take that last pawn.
Yeah.
We're going to have to analyze this game later because
I wonder where did white possibly go wrong? You know, he was up a pawn very early in the opening, and black had actually lost castling, right? So something must have obviously gone wrong.
And we see a draw on that board. I'm going to bring up the board 4 in this matchup because Microsoft Redmond, excuse me, no, that's not Microsoft Redmond. This is a PT match against American Express. E6 check. Doesn't that win a... Oh, rook e7 at the end. You give up the piece to just win it back, but then white will win this pawn on b7. So it looks like this one should fizzle out into a draw. I don't know, Nemo, are there any winning chances? I feel like black could have some because the white king is cut away from the pawns.
I mean, I think this one is going to be a draw for sure. In fact, white does have to actually be careful to not lose the f, g, or h pawn because that could end up being very disastrous.
Right, like a move like f4, think, oh, I'll just make that move. Then the rook would come to e4 with check. I still think that black can push this a bit because the king is cut off. And we often underestimate in endgames just how important figuring out where the king goes. If this king were on g2, we'd shake hands. We'd never even question it. But with that king on d4, anymore, I'm playing for a win from the black side.
Yeah.
And here she goes, pushes a pawn here. And she wants to bring her own king in, probably via g5, and then try to get into f4. This could get scary relatively quickly.
I do think the best way for white to play here is to potentially just put the rook on the 4th. Or, you know, you could try to check them back, but I would be a little bit scared here in terms of king going to f4 and then f3 maybe.
And here's king f4. Okay, watch out. Rook a3 check, and then the rook can pick up this pawn, so you protect your own pawn. And in fact, the engine did not like that decision. You win a pawn, and yet the engine says, no, that wasn't the right thing to do. But I think it is, especially when white has 11 seconds left.
I mean, this should be a draw still.
Right.
Technically, even if white does not have the f2 pawn, do correct me if I'm wrong, Robert, but would that still be a theoretical draw?
It would be a miserable defense if it is a draw. So I would say that I've actually played that position before, both on the offensive and defensive side. It's no fun. So don't take this pawn. Don't take this pawn because we trade rooks and the king comes to f3 and wins this pawn. So 6 seconds, you got to move. King h2 is the right choice. And white needs to play rook h4 check and then take, okay, king g1 still all right, but you're moving in a scary direction.
And this is the number one thing people need to remember if you're looking at a rook endgame. You know, the engine might say draw, but is it a draw over the board? Even this position is a draw, a theoretical draw, but you do have to do a lot of accurate defending. We're going to go into a very well-known endgame. I actually forgot the name right now. Do you
I don't
mind helping me with
I don't
that?
know names of anything. All I know is you wait for the pawn to go to f3 and then you release your rook. You no, no,
Oh,
now
no,
the
no,
king
no,
comes
no, no.
because if you
This is
check,
exactly what we're talking about.
oh, f3, it's no, it's winning
It's
because
the
your rook.
filator position. There we go. The filator position. Very well known draw. Except you
Oh,
had to keep the rook on the third until the pawn came down. So then you would have infinite checks from the back ranks.
oh gosh, no, I knew there's no time. And of course, you know this kind of technique, but you just say, I have 5 seconds, I got to move. And the point, everybody, is that let's say you play rook to c3, the pawn comes to f3. You do not want to allow this king up because then there's a checkmate threat. So you release the rook back here so that when the king approaches, you check it away. You just keep checking it. And you can do this forever. You can just check it everywhere, all across the board. You get the point. The king eventually will have to try to like snake backwards towards the rook, and then the rook comes before. So like, let's just show that. As soon as your king goes all the way back, I just go rook here, and I'm going to win your pawn because rook a3, there's king f2, and thank you very much. So, wow, that is a draw that was missed. And honestly, I think that Chelsea Monica deserves so much credit for the way she played that game
For
because
sure.
we were looking, wait, rook and 3 pawns against rook and 3 pawns. Well, that should be a draw, but she made it difficult, and White's king was cut off. She then won a pawn, and then she played it to the very end, and White had no time.
Yeah, once again, friendly reminder, guys, it is a very, very, very difficult to hold these kind of positions when, you know, you're low on time. So definitely, rook endgames are something else.
Wow, and we have some scores for you just from these matches. Look at that. Microsoft Redmond wins 4-0. And Francesco Rimbaldi, the grandmaster playing for Microsoft there, he was playing international master, so a very tough opponent, and yet still a 4-0 score. We were looking briefly at Megan Lee. She's 2250-ish, and she was playing a 2100 plus player. So it's not like this was lopsided on paper. No, in fact, the team from Telos had a good chance, just wasn't meant to be. And then Goldman Sachs, they heavily outrated their opponent, and yet they only just eked by their 2.5, 1.5 over the Farber group. And then and a walk there, they kind of crushed 4-0. Not bad. So many 4-0s.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, these scores, remember, once again, the board score does matter when it comes to deciding tiebreakers and who advances out of the pool. But I do believe Microsoft Redmond is definitely running away with the competition.
Yeah, this is looking like they will be in charge. So they're doing great. And, well, trying to think if anyone else has a chance. I mean, American Express just got blanked 4-0.
How did Whoa, American Express is very, very strong.
That is incredible. We were talking about that matchup, board 4, Chelsea Monica. We saw that game at the end there. She was the biggest rating differential, but Carissa loses. Mark Ginsburg loses. The two IMs from PT, they beat the American Express IMs and the bottom two boards as well. Wins for PT. 4-0 sweep. That's impressive. And look at that, Amazon against Airbnb. 2-2
Yeah,
tie.
I love that one.
It's just shake hands. We're good.
Yeah.
And it looks like Deloitte New York at least is up 2-0. We'll try to get word on the final games. So if those are still in session, we'll try to pull those up, or maybe the scores are just getting updated. So
yeah.
all right.
And as a reminder to everybody, the people playing in this event are members of either corporations or free agents that the corporations themselves have handpicked to represent them at the FIDE Online World Corporate Chess Championship.
That's right. And I mean, I'm just looking at the before the round standing just to make sure I have a good sense of it. Microsoft Redmond just looking too good, really just too powerful as a squad, led by Rambaldi on board 1, but all the way down to board 4. They're a force, and I actually think they could be a favorite overall, no matter the opponent later. And we do have a game here. We still have an end game where White is up 3 pawns now, but I don't know if you were watching earlier today, Nemo. There was an end game where someone was up 3 pawns. And it's 4 pawns and a rook against 1 pawn and a rook, and unfortunately, the player lost all 4 of their pawns.
Oh no!
Yeah, so
That is most unfortunate to hear.
Crazy things can happen. Crazy things do happen, but I don't think in this one. Look at that. Not taking back, instead rushing the H pawn up the board. That's going to become a queen. I think that's just straightforward. You can't
Yeah, this
stop
should
it.
be a pretty straightforward win. There's no way that light square bishop is going to be anywhere close to being able to stop that pass pawn.
No, not a chance. So it looks like White is just cruising here. Give up the okay, keeping everything. Now that's a little greedy. You didn't need the knight. You could have just promoted to get a queen, but I don't mind it. You can now
You
get a
really
queen.
wanted to make a point.
Yeah, this is the Deloitte matchup that we were looking at before, where Deloitte is playing IQVIA, and it's 2-0 in Deloitte's favor, and this looks like it's going to be 3 in just a moment now. So they will win the match. They want to rack up all the board points. A reminder to everybody that the standings are determined by board points first and foremost, and the tiebreaker is match points. So if you draw a match and one team wins all their matches, the team that drew a match can still win if they rack up 4-0 victories. So it's about the board points. And usually, honestly, the team that wins is both, right? The team that has the most match points and board points at the same time.
Yeah. Hopefully no stalemates. Okay.
Oh,
I was
no.
a little bit worried about knight to d7 because that would have been stalemate, but he has moved the queen away first.
And just using that knight just like you would a king on this side of the board, and well, the queen's coming to b8 with mate. Oh, don't stall. Don't stall. No, resignation. I didn't think it was going to be a stall.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Deloitte New York, pretty happy as a squad winning this matchup. And wow, I mean, what a round it was. It happened quickly. Sorry again for some of the tech issues we had, but we are ready for after this round's done, we have 2 more rounds left. Pretty excited. And now that you're all joining us here, we just want to remind you again about the initiatives that this tournament is raising funds for. It is Chess for People with Disabilities. FIDE has done a ton to help the cause. There has been a world championship for people with disabilities. They're really working hard to promote the game for people of all backgrounds. And so please, if you're able to, do use the link, the command Corp donate, and also click the panel underneath the stream, FIDE Chess Veteran Support Program and Chess and Education. A lot of good work being done.
Yep,
so,
going to good causes.
Nemo, any quick thoughts, any final thoughts after 4 rounds before we take a break and get ready for the 5th round?
Well, I do think Microsoft Redmond is, really running away with the competition. So I'm actually excited to see if there will be anybody to stop them in the next 2 rounds. As a reminder, this event started yesterday, and today is the 2nd day of it. Whoever does win from the pool, there will be, is it finals? Do they go straight into finals, or will they be quarterfinals?
Yeah, there will be 8 teams. So 6 earlier today qualified. The 2 winners, 1 from each pool from this session, will qualify for tomorrow's playoff. There'll be 8 teams, knockout, a bracket style event. So if you thought you'd get work done tomorrow and you're playing on the chess team, the only work you're doing is on the chessboard. So if you can keep on winning, get your team to the playoffs, that I'm sure is well worth it. So everybody, we will be back shortly. Stay tuned for more coverage of the FIDE Corporate World Chess Championship.
Yep.
welcome back to the FIDE World Corporate Chess Championship. Grandmaster Robert Hess alongside me, WGM Nemo. Nemo Joe, how's it going, Nemo?
It's going very, very well. I hope everybody had a good break. We're back now to look at some very exciting games that, we did a little bit of research on.
You know what's funny is I kind of just want to give you one name. Like you, I feel like you're that kind of rock star where I was just like thinking, how do I introduce you? How do we do this? But I'm just gonna go by Nemo. I'm gonna continue doing that. So we were looking in the break at some great games. Let's remind everybody of the updated standings after 4 rounds, where you see that Microsoft Redmond is large and in charge in Group A, but Anahuac is just right there behind them. And because they both have 7 match points there, that means that I believe they've already played and tied 2-2. And if that's the case, then, well, they have to play other competitors like Goldman Sachs and Deloitte Chicago. So it's interesting to note that despite having fewer match points overall, Goldman Sachs actually has the most. They've won all 4 matches. They have fewer board points. They have won by a thinner margin.
Mm-hmm.
And in the Group B, I think that PT is pulling away a bit. They have 14 to 12 and a half, but Deloitte New York putting up a good fight and still has a chance.
Yeah, I mean, this is Microsoft Redmond is really running away with the points in Pool A, but Anahuac still has chances to catch up. I'm not sure if they've played before or if we're gonna see them play against each other this upcoming game.
Yes, so let's dive into some analysis for everybody. We did pull up games. We want to help you all learn some things, get a little bit better, and we have end games, we have tactics. So I'm going to start with everybody's favorite, the end game, because there were not many pieces left, and we were looking at this game in quite a bit of detail. And this is the matchup that was between American Express and PT. And in this position, you look at the evaluation bar, Nemo, it says zeros. But when we play end games like this, I don't think we think in these terms. So what would your mindset be like just staring at this if you were playing a game in time trouble?
I would say that black, I mean, has that higher pass pawn, but I do think it should still be a draw. However, we have briefly talked about how rook endgames are so difficult to play, especially under time pressure. In this position, both players are probably playing on increment, and honestly, anything could happen.
And there's Dvoretsky's endgame manual out there that has studies just like this one. And you can hardly blame International Master Ginsburg for the move that he went with, because he went king to g3. But look at the bar drop instantly. And the reason why is the king can't actually get to the f4 square because this pawn on g2 is under attack. So it looks like the best move. You're just trying to bring your king up, activate, but unfortunately your king has to keep its attention on the g2 pawn. So the move that would have held was playing king to h3, and it's a very long sequence. The game does not end here, but the essential point is that you play g4, the king comes here, you move your rook back to one of these squares, let's say a3 even, and then you are going to bring your king via f4 up the board and start creating problems. So it seems like the end of this should be that white will give up the rook for this passed pawn, but then black will have to do the same on the other side of the board. And mistakes like this happen all the time, Nemo.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, these mistakes are very easy to make, unfortunately, when they are in a rook endgame. And honestly, just hearing Robert talk about these rook endgames with so much experience is something else. Because if I look at this position, I'd be like, wait, why is king g3 exactly a mistake? But you have to play these very carefully.
It looks like such a good move. And if I had 3 seconds on my clock, I think I'd probably do the same thing. Like king g3 is my instinct. I'm going towards the center of the board. I'm going up to f4, but it's just unfortunate the pawn needs defense. And look what happened in the game. King c8, king had to go to h3. You lost a very important tempo by doing this. And now the black king just walked up the board, marching forward here. White tried his best, but look at this. Rook c4 check. The king came up. That's what you wanted, right? Except for the fact that rook c5 and rook a5. Very nice technique. Give a check, block the a file. Now the pawn's going to promote.
Yeah, I mean, this is a very classic idea where you just cut off the rook from, preventing black's promotion square. So now that white's rook can't defend a1, easy promotion for black.
And that was the game there. So it was a tough battle between two international masters. We understand the mistake. It's time trouble induced, but it's a great learning lesson of how the king actually wanted to activate, couldn't do so, and then black took the win. So that was a very important game for the standings. And we have other games, not just end games. I liked this one here because I have to give credit to Vinesh Jethva from Autodesk. Because if I'm not mistaken, if I'm remembering correctly, this player is rated, let me make sure I get this right so I don't misstate it, but I had looked this up and I think I'm right. Yes, 1304. All right. Black is rated 1304. White's rating is 2140. That is an 800 plus point rating gap. And Black did ultimately lose this game. And it was pretty sad how it ended. But look at this, knight takes d2. And knight takes d2 looks like a reasonable move because your rooks are on the open line hitting the pawn. But after knight f4, uh-oh, your rook has one safe square and you're
Oh
walking,
no, and you just get forked.
you get forked. I mean, knight takes d2, it's an automatic move, just like king g3 in the previous game. But you have to take with the rook because of this knight f4 idea. It just isn't that natural to do so. So knight f4 play good spot. Knight takes g2, takes the rook there. And now Black is running with the king. And honestly, king to b6, a brave choice. This queen can come back and keep giving it checks. But after rook e3 going for a mate, a6, another good move. Queen d, knight b3, excuse me, rook to g8, good move. Queen d6. And unfortunately, this is such a natural move to make. Queen c7. But after queen c5, your king has no escape.
Ooh, he really just self-checkmated himself.
And it happens, right? Where you just make, look at this move. Queen c7 makes perfect sense. I am trying to trade queens. I see that rook e7 is a threat, attacking the queen and creating an attack on the 7th rank. So queen c7 just offers the queen exchange. But unfortunately, your king only has this square to go to after queen c5 check. So you are running out of moves. And instead, the move rook a to e8 stops rook e7, offers an exchange of rooks. The king is still quite vulnerable, but Black is the one dictating the action at this point. So unfortunately, a great game played by someone who is highly outrated. I think that that was just a couple accurate moves from going his way.
I mean, that is why, ratings in chess are there, because you do have to be very accurate for the entire game, and not just on two moves, but quite literally the entire game. And I'm just thinking about some of the games I've seen recently where you can play a perfect game but blunder on the last move, and that's game over.
Just like that, sadly. The king is out of moves, and that king b6 walk may be a little bit too adventurous. And next time, hopefully, the king can go backwards. But a great tactical eye by somebody who was 1300 and playing someone who is over 2100 and had the upper hand. So good job. And for the player with the white pieces, Ana Paula, very good job just not giving up, creating threats, and then finally getting the checkmate. So another game I wanted to pull up was the game between Madwal Sankalp and Janusz Kudelka, because in this game, I was looking at this, and that knight on b7 looks real bad to me. So, Nemo, when you look at this position, the king on f7, kind of out in the open, the position is one where white has, for now, 2 extra pawns. You'd think that white was the one who was pressing, right?
Yeah, for sure. White is definitely looking like the one that has black hanging by the ropes.
And this was the matchup between Amazon West, the player with the white pieces is from Amazon US West, and Airbnb California is with the black pieces. And Airbnb California did win 3-1 in large part thanks to this game, because look what happens in the next few moves. Bishop takes d4, makes sense. Bishop takes g6 check. Look, that's a free pawn. Might as well grab it. And all of a sudden, black is the one who turns things around, goes in the attack. Knight d6.
And this is why I like to say, when you're playing faster chess, rapid or blitz, it's always easier to be the one on the offensive, because defending is so difficult when you're low on time.
It absolutely is, and knights are such tricky pieces to deal with in a time scramble. So bishop c2, saving the bishop. Queen d2, okay, watch out for queen e2 check, or rook e2, the bishop's under attack. Queen d1, a good defensive move, but look at the eval bar. It was like +3 or whatever was the start, now down to even, and that knight goes into f5. Now it's going for the dark squares, and after rook a1, knight g3 check, king to g1. This is the known mating net after rook e1, no matter which direction your king goes.
Oh, another one of these self checkmates. I don't know what it is about self checkmates that's always feels so painful to look at for me.
No, I'm with you. It stinks because just one move ago, king f2 says that rook can't get in, and it's still not that easy of a position. The rook on e7, the knight on G3 are doing great work, and you can just make a draw with knight H1 check. Because if you go
Mm-hmm.
king to G1, hey, we've seen this story before. King has to go to H2 because the knight covers the square, and then the knight comes right back to G3, and there is going to be a mate on H1. You can go up to H5. Excuse me, H3. I stole the move. H5 takes away the square. In comes rook H1, not just check, but that's a mate. So there were clear dangers for White's king, and Black was able to take this one.
Robert, have you ever been checkmated like this in a bullet game where you're completely winning, but then your opponent just goes for the simplest mate threat and you just ignore it and then you just get checkmated?
Thankfully, I don't play too much bullet, so it doesn't happen very often. But yes, it has had a number of times. I am trying to forget about it. It's
I think
neither
we all are trying to forget about those kind of bullet games.
out of sight, out of mind. And
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I'm just going to go back quickly in this game because at the point that we started looking right here, that knight's on B7, and that knight ended up on this G3 square. You couldn't believe it just looking at the starting position, but that was good defense by Black, and it turned it into offense very quickly. So there's one more game I wanted to look at. We still have some time, so it's a bit of a lesson in a sense. The game between Anna Matlin and DS Shawshank was the same match. This is the matchup between Airbnb California, the Anna Matlin with the white pieces, and Amazon US West with the black pieces. I think this was a masterful game, and both players rated around 2100, 2050. I see. So even matchup on paper, but watch how this game continues. First of all, G4, explosive move, and you're attacking the bishop, so the bishop trades. That looks reasonable. The knight comes out after the pawn, so you're putting pressure in the center. I think both sides doing reasonable things. King sits on F2, can't be attacked thanks to this wall of pawns here defending it. And I want to pause here for a second because when you see that knight get to B3, aren't you kind of like, hey, isn't Black just dominating the white squares?
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
And, like, so if you're playing this game, like, kind of what thought process would you go through here?
I mean, I want that knight out. I think like my thought process would just be to play knight d2 and knight c1, but also at the same time, you could also consider playing rook takes b3 or just giving up the exchange sacrifice because this position will be very uncomfortable.
Yeah, and it looks really uncomfortable, and especially if this E3 pawn can get in trouble. But I like the way White played this because I would have the same thoughts. Like, get that knight out of here. She says, yeah, whatever. That knight's not bothering me too much. Knight G3. H5, like just casually doing things on the king side. And if the knight takes, the queen takes back to defend the pawn. And after G6, trying to stop the knight from coming to F5, where we've talked about the knight F5 several times during the last round. Takes, G5. Let's go. Let's push those pawns. Knight back, E4. The knight was kicked out, so let's get our pawn to E4. And just how quickly White turns this into an initiative. King gets out of the pin, bishop to E3, rook F8. Black is doing everything right, and yet look at White. Once the engine starts thinking, digging a little deeper here, it starts to appreciate White's position more and more because of this really strong pawn center. And Nemo, when I saw this, takes, queen G4, at first glance, like, wait, this has to be good for Black, right? That's an attack.
Yeah, for sure.
You got two rooks down the F file. Maybe your rook will go to F3 if White isn't careful. And yet look at this calm move. Takes, and queen E2, giving up the F file, because if you can trade queens, your claim is that with that strong pawn center and this knight not actually doing anything, the knight that I feared when I first looked, that White can just take control. I mean, this is great technique from the White side, and Black did nothing like overtly wrong. It just is a position where move by move, White improved the position.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely a very, very solid gameplay from White. And knowing where your advantages are and how to get out of these positions in which you're worse is a very, very important aspect of chess too. Because like White knows perfectly well, the knight is very strong on b3, but if you go into endgame, there's nothing for the knight to hold hostage.
That's true, and it did go to the end game, so we'll just hop forward after the capture. We'll only look at this a little bit more, but you see here, this pawn, one pawn handles, let's turn that green, takes care of two of Black's pawns, and Black has an extra pawn technically on the queen side, but the A3 and C3 pawns, those two pawns take care of Black's three pawns. So on the other hand, White's pawns in the center, there's no match for them. They're going forward, and look at them go. E5, knight F4, knight D5, knight F6 check. We have connect 4 with the pawns. So, I mean, this was just seriously like a borderline perfect game from what I'm seeing here. It needs more study, but I like the way that White just took control and ended up converting this game actually with simple moves. H5, okay, you're not doing anything. My bishop covers G5. All right, your king comes in, my king does the same. And after this, just moving forward here, pushing the pawns, king D4, making sure that you don't play E6 check, which looks good, but this pawn is pinned, so you're not going to be able to take the knight. So king D4 gets out of this, and then finally take a C4 pawn, push the E pawn, and pin the knight. I mean, this is just a wonderful, wonderful game.
Yeah, very beautifully played game by White. Almost perfect starting. Black thought they were getting a very nice position when they got the knight to B3, but in fact, it was quite a far. The knight was actually a little bit far away from where the actual fight was, which was on the king side. So, sometimes those kind of outposts don't need to scare you.
That's right. Looks can be deceiving. It's on an advanced square. It's protected by a pawn. But White and Madeline, she just ignored it all, went for a great plan of expanding in the center, and she earned the victory. So the players doing well. That was a big win for Airbnb California. And while the teams are getting ready for the next round, we want to remind everybody that this is a chess competition. It's bringing about players from all across the globe. We love to see the international flair, but it's also to raise funds and raise awareness for different initiatives. FIDE has led the charge with trying to do so for players with disabilities, for the veterans program, and also for chess and education. So please lend your support if you're able to. Nemo, that was fun. I always love analyzing games. That was a cool few games that we got to see there. Some end games, some tactics, some knight maneuvering, and finally just expanding in the center and saying, your threats don't scare me. Let me create threats of my own.
I mean, I'm definitely learning some chess here, and I hope all of chat is as well. Those people who are watching, I hope you guys are. When you actually said that it is a chess competition, I was like, sorry, did I miss something here? And then I'm glad that you added the rest of it, I was like, wait a minute.
Yes, it's all fun and games until somebody plays in a corporate chess league, and then it's serious business. And these teams are taking it seriously. You can tell by the way they're playing. They have very strong players throughout their lineups. And I mean, I said that the checkmate that we saw with International Master Ali, that was at first glance, oh, that's the game of the tournament. Then I look at the game like this, very different styles. One was electric, one was sacrificing a queen for a smothered checkmate. You gotta love to see that. And then you see a game like this where it's like, wait, where did black go wrong? I can't quite pinpoint it. So really fine technique in this game. And on that note, we have about 15 minutes until the next round begins. We are going to take a break. When we return, we'll dive deep into round 5 of this FIDE World Chess Corporate Challenge.
Yep.
are back, ready for round 5 of these Western Division. We have Microsoft Redmond, large and in charge, doing really well in their group. And of course, in the other group, we have the team PT doing extremely well. So, Nemo, do you expect them to continue to keep their lead, or do you think that some of the trailers can make a comeback?
I do think that PT will keep the lead because I mean we just saw them 4-0 American Express, and American Express has not only Carissa yet, but a lot of very, very strong players as well.
Yeah, the problem is when you're American Express, you just lost that team. You just can't play them directly, so you have to hope that other people, other teams, do you favors and take them down. So it's not going to be easy, but you still have a chance, especially in the Group A. There are many teams at the top there. Goldman Sachs is playing Microsoft Redmond, so we are going to focus mainly on the top matchups as we are getting into the penultimate round of the group stage, and only the winner, only the winning team makes it to tomorrow's playoff. So the two teams from these divisions, and then the 6 teams from earlier today in the Eastern Division. So
Hmm.
let's check it out. We have liftoff. I see Francesco Rambaldi taking on Ziquan. So it's a GM IM battle. And what do you make of this? Are we playing just some bullet chess with FIDE players on
I
both
like
sides?
this setup. I might start playing this setup. Do you ever play, in not too serious tournaments? Do you just play whatever opening you feel like playing?
Like online or in person?
Online, of course. I
Oh,
mean, in person, you hardly ever have.
this is my opening. It's like exclusively my opening. I play the hippo where I put my pawns on D3 and E3 and my knights on D2 and E2. You can look through my game history. That's like all I play. So I'm very familiar with this. This is actually better version because you're actually trying to play in the center with your knight on F3, and you want to open up this bishop on the light square diagonal. So because both bishops are developed, white can try to claim that black's bishop on C8 may not have as easy of a time to get in the game.
For sure. I mean, this is one of those openings where, white doesn't really get an advantage, but there's nothing really wrong with playing it. So
Yeah,
Francesco is chillin'.
pretty standard position. I'm going to go to the next game while Ziquan thinks. We have Bogdan Viranu taking on International Master Max Uritsky. So an IM battle here. We just see GM and IM. These teams have very strong players from boards 1 through 4. And the last one played was E5. So I question the location of this bishop on F4, but this was not an E4 game. It looks at first glance like, hey, was this E4 some kind of Pirates? No, it
Hmm.
started with D4 and London system, but a London system where black struck in the center very quickly, and white made a second bishop move with bishop to g5. So what do you make of this, Nemo?
I do think white has wasted a move by playing bishop to f4 and then bishop to g5. So I definitely hope that, he is going to play a slightly altered filater position. I don't think the bishop particularly belongs on g5 in the filater, but we might see some decent things coming out from white's position.
I think so because the center is strong for white, but black is very solid. You can play a stubborn approach here, not giving white any sort of aggressive opportunities. And the fact that white went bishop f4 and bishop g5, this is a position you can get in e4 openings, but the bishop goes to g5 in one turn. So black was essentially handed an extra tempo.
And this extra tempo actually really matters because letting black play b5 in the filater is exactly what you don't want to do. And that is why if the bishop had not gone to g5, you would have had time to play a4 in order to keep your bishop on c4. That diagonal will be very good for the light square bishop, but now unfortunately it will be stuck behind the e4 pawn for very likely the rest of the game.
Yeah, it's funny because sometimes people think, oh, let me take on d4, but then the knight takes on d4 and moves forward. That actually can be played. It's acceptable. But black often wants to keep the tension alive because of d e5, and you take back with the d pawn, then that bishop becomes much stronger immediately.
Mm-hmm.
So this match still pretty tight. We're in the early stages. Nothing too special has happened. So we're just going to move on to some other games here. Just click Philip Weiss taking on Masruri Rahman. And that game is in the B division, West Group B, Airbnb California. The player with the white pieces, Philip Weiss, taking on PT Pelbuhan's board 3, who's black outrates white by 430 points. So this is a big mismatch. And Nemo, I gotta ask you, this pawn structure on the king side not doing white any favors, right?
Yeah, this pawn structure is not looking good, and it's not help at all that he's actually going to be losing one of the pawns on top of it. So White's king structure, the castle, will look a little bit more like a barn.
It's a good way to put it, yes. And there's minimal hay in front there, and so the king is in deep trouble. And if we just go back, this is how it happened. Bishop g4 was played, and after h3, bishop takes f3. White did not want to lose sight of the d4 pawn, and that is why he took with the pawn on f3. But that's,
At that
save a
point, I
pawn.
would think I would rather just take with the queen.
I would have as well. You save a pawn, yeah, but you're not even saving the pawn. You save it and for one move, but after knight f5, you're losing that pawn anyway. So this is a pretty tough position. In fact, black can take the exchange rather than a pawn. Both d4 and g3 are hanging, but knight e3 forks the queen and the rook. I would actually take a pawn here, Nemo. I think that taking the exchange leaves white feeling a bit safer, and he does go
Mhm.
for the exchange. So I would have grabbed probably the pawn on g3.
But that is the mistake that a lot of lower rated players make, is to always go for the extra material. But, a pawn is worth a point. A rook is worth 1.5 points. But I do think black's potential attack on the white king will be worth more than 0.5.
Yeah, I do trust FIDE Master Rahman here saying, okay, I could take your pawns. I know that, but let's just go for the rook. Those pawns are still weak. They're all in the third rank. You don't typically want them that far. It leaves your king more exposed. So it looks like black is going to score this one. So that's,
Ooh, this is one of those times when I don't necessarily even want to take the rook on f1. I would just play rook to e8 and then take on d4. But hey, this works too.
yeah, I think this is in line with what was just planned. And
Hmm.
that's one check. The king can slide away, and it's not going to be enough. So it looks really promising for black in this position. And I'm just going to move on to board four in the same matchup. We have Chelsea Monica, who does stream. She is playing Charles One. So this is a rating gap of nearly 700 points. She's a much higher rated player with the white pieces. And honestly, black is hanging in there just fine right now. This pawn d5, pawn c4 structure that could be problematic if this d5 pawn gets attacked a bunch of times. But after knight e5, I wouldn't take that. I don't want to open up the queen's attack on this pawn. In fact, people think that this is a good decision, and then queen d4, rook d1, and that pawn on d5 is just stuck in place. So I would actually just avoid capturing and instead just move my queen to d6 and play more solidly.
Hmm. I mean, there will still be quite a big issue for black in order to, like, keep the center intact, but he's doing all right for now.
Yeah, this move b5, good move. Honestly, this is impressive play thus far. And what Chelsea Monaco does extremely well is, hey, let's look at the time for a second. An extra 4 minutes, so a higher rating, much more time. The position, you see the eval bar says pretty much zeros. It's level. I like the way black is played, but of course you have to trust the player with the white pieces. She's much higher rated. She's maybe used to these types of positions. I just
Hmm.
think that black should not fear at all.
For sure. And this is one of those struggles that, lower rated players often face, is when they are playing against somebody higher rated, when they're playing these kind of positions that they're maybe not necessarily too familiar with. They will be spending a lot of time, but you have to remember it's a 10-minute +2 game. The +2 seconds will not be particularly beneficial when it comes into an end game, because it's, you know, barely any additional time.
That's true. For some people, it's a lot of extra time. Just that even 1 second increment makes a world of difference. For others, it's like, well, I'm moving like I'm in mud, not pushing forward. And well, actually, look at this decision. So I didn't like b3, and the reason why I didn't like it was it feels like it gives black a pass pawn, and there's no longer a pawn for white to deal with. But this is the wrong capture. I get why you would do it this way, but here comes queen d4, here comes e4, and white's position is completely freed up. So just a move ago here, b takes c4 is better. You keep this bishop on g2, the bishop on c6, queen on d7. They all cover the d5 square. You give yourself a passed pawn that's protected, and it's hard to see how white makes progress. But d takes c4, tries to trade bishops. White shuts the door on it. Here it comes, the pawn storm. White's much better now.
Yeah, and these positions are actually very interesting. They're very dynamic, and it's very much from a textbook. And we've got the pass pawn for white on d5. We got the pass pawn for black on c4. It's going to be a race of who is actually able to promote their pass pawn.
Yeah, and for now, at least black's pawns are stuck because if you ever played b4, you drop c4, and you can't play c3 without b4. So it takes some time. Look at this move, rook f to d8. If rook a to d8 went there, that pawn a7 potentially could have been captured. So this queen is doing so much good work here. Staring at the black king, staring at the a7 pawn. I would think about h4, h5, kind of a way to break into black's position. If you'd let me go all the way to h6, I might go checkmate you on the dark squares. So I think h4 is a natural move that Chelsea will probably be able to see.
Yes, for sure. And Chelsea, as we've talked about, is a very strong player. She's underrated right now with a Chess.com rating. You know, very strong player. Oh, I don't really like Queen D6 because you're just setting yourself up for E5 and another pawn push. Those
Yeah, so
pawns are going to just come right down the board.
the only way this would be a good move is if e5 for some reason is bad. And well, the engine is kind of like, I don't know about that. So I'm with you. It looks wrong to
Mm-hmm.
me. But some after playing e5, perhaps the pawns in the center of the board here can be targeted as the game continues. I also like, I have to be honest, I like the move. But perhaps there's a queen a3, and the claim from a robotic point of view is that you're not going to get after me soon enough. I can start trying to come after your queen side. And actually, queen b6, similar idea. Let's trade queens. I'll come after your a2 pawn. I think black has some chances here.
Yeah. You know, pushing those pawns up might actually on second hand be a bit more difficult if the queens come off the board. I definitely think white should be keeping the queens on.
I'm with you there. I would keep the queens on, and the queen can just slide over to f4, for example. White has an advantage, but it's black who's fending it off pretty nicely. Just 3 minutes left. That's going to be a problem. So I'm going to go to another game quickly. I just saw a result pop up. It is that game we were looking at earlier, Philip Weiss and Masuri Rahman. That's a good win for PT, and we expected that to happen. And it's a full rook advantage before his exchange, so a nice win. And I see a
Yeah.
draw, so I just want to pull that one up. That is the team from Airbnb. We saw Anna Matlin's nice win in the round before. Now she draws an IM who's 2400 with the black pieces.
Wait, why is this a draw?
Why is this a draw? I have no idea. I don't have the answer to that question. Perhaps it was just a position where rook e8 was going to be played, and both sides, both kind of concerned about their position, so they agreed. And if you're Anna Matlin and you're outrated by several hundred rating points against an IM, well, I think that's probably a reasonable decision. But unfortunately, her board 3 has already lost, and her board 4 is outrated completely. So the PT board 2, Farid Fermancia, I think the plan is, well, I don't mind making a draw, maybe higher rated, but my boards 3 and 4 are going to win.
For sure. I mean, this is just one of those positions where I would look at and be very confused as to why we are drawing. I'm definitely one of those kind of people who like to play for a win every single time, but you know, whatever they decide to do.
So draw grid. Let's go to the game still in progress. This is board 1 in that matchup for PT. They have International Master Ali, who landed that smothered checkmate, that beautiful checkmate. But this is a complicated game. I see the advantage on the evaluation bar. It says it's great for black, but I don't know. This is way more complicated than simply summing it up to a couple numbers on the screen. An e5 played. There could be an e6 if you're not careful. If you take on e5, there might be a knight e6. I could see some kind of sacrificial checkmate happening, Nima.
Oh, this king is going to be very uncomfortable really soon.
Like, let's look at this. Takes 96. Takes bishop g6. Look, oh, there goes the bar. Didn't like bishop g6 check. So what does it like instead? Or that looks like a good
I
move.
definitely like the
Oh,
triple pawns.
it's definitely the check, but maybe it's look at it. It's going back up as soon as the move is made. It's trying to get the depth, trying to better understand the position. It had to be bishop g6 at that point, and it likes white's position, but this means that it's really complicated as it doesn't see all the way through.
Yeah.
And I got to go after this king. So be careful when you rely on the engine too much. Sometimes it can be a little bit wrong. Most of the time, it's absolutely correct. But the most important thing is that the human players that are playing this game, they don't know what the engine says. So if you're International Master Ali here, you're like, wait, 96, that's scary. Pawn e6, that's scary. You're not thinking, oh, I'm 1.6 points better. That's not going through your mind at all. So I actually like white's position. I think it's much easier to play.
This is exactly how you would play if it was a blitz game. I mean, the engine might not like it, but I think it's easier for white to play despite white only having 2 minutes, by the way. 2 minutes.
2 minutes, but a huge attack
Mm-hmm.
about to be played. So I like this position for white. I'm going to go on over to Francesco Rambaldi, who is the board one for Microsoft Redmond. And this position by Ziquan, it is, wait, no, not an extra pawn. I thought it was an extra pawn because I thought black was up one, but no, this C pawn evens it out. Two knights against the bishop pair. So what do you make of this, Nemo? I feel like the king could be vulnerable later in the game for white, but for now, that bishop on f3 is such a great piece.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is one of those positions where, it's still looking quite equal, but it's going to come down to is the grandmaster better than the national master in these kind of positions? And the answer is usually yes. You get to a grandmaster title by having a deeper understanding of the position, being able to convert these very, very minuscule advantages, such as the pair of bishops in this case and the pawn majority on the queen side, into a potential win.
And the extra minute. We shouldn't forget about the clock. An extra minute for Francesco Rambaldi at this point. It's a rich position. It's really complex here. No clear plan for either side how to proceed. And that's why black is in the think tank. International Master has positions like this before, but never explicitly this, or specifically, actually, this position. The knight comes into c5. That looks good. Maybe I'll get a knight to e4. Try to plan the light squares a bit. Maybe I'll play a5 at some point to keep that knight nice and safe, so there's no b4. But even the move b4, Nemo, that's a risky move to play because as soon as you leave your pawn chain, then a square like c4 can get under attack.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. It'll be hard to make moves for white, but I believe in Francesco. I mean, some of these positions, you don't even need to make great moves. You just need to make moves to stall the position out. And those are like my favorite kind of moves recently to find. It's just to find moves that don't make your position worse.
For sure. And you sometimes you do that because you're up time and you just say, oh, my opponent doesn't have enough seconds left to figure this all out. We have to go back to this game. I'm sorry. We're going to have to go back here because look at the last move
Ooh.
played. Knight, so c takes d4 was played by black, and then knight e6, hitting the queen, hitting the bishop, and giving up the knight for the bishop g6 check. I see what the engine bar says here. I don't care. I don't believe it in either direction. I think both players could win or lose this game in the next few moves. Gosh, Nemo, this is scary for black.
Definitely. I mean, look at what the engine says, but as we both know, it's not always that simple for human brains to just figure it out. However, what do you think if black just takes on e3 or c3?
That's which one, right? This could
Yeah,
be a
which one?
huge
I would
difference.
take on c3 personally, because then you get c takes b2, and then you maybe can bring your knight to a4. Just see more
True.
potential for attack there. But it's very difficult to make these choices when you have 2 minutes on the clock, and it's a bit of a coin flip at that
If you
point.
take on c3, there could be queen f2 because now your queen's trapped. And if you take, there's like a checkmate here, something like that. And what a wild position as the bar goes up and down. And take on e3 was played. Queen takes back. Take here. Okay, this king. How is this king going to survive?
Well, to be fair, now that you are up two minor pieces, not just one, if you play bishop g6 and king to fa and rook to f1, then maybe we can just see knight to f6. And you would definitely rather play knight f6 than bishop f6 because you want the dark squared bishop, right? It's still aimed at white's king.
And rook f1 check, we would likely see the piece to f6. And the one bad thing on knight f6 is you may leave this knight on b6 hanging. For now, the queen covers it, but it doesn't like that move. That looks like a good move to me too.
Oh, maybe I cast or jinxed it the other way.
Oh my gosh, I think I see something. This is really hard, and I don't have the moves, but let's go rook takes d6. Pawn takes d6. E takes f6. I'm ripping your king side open. Bishop f6 if you don't want to lose that bishop with check.
And then queen takes e6, and we're threatening checkmate, as well as rook takes f6, and there's actually no way to stop both of the threats.
Oh my gosh, and then just ripping the king side open to shreds here. And rook takes d6 played. Rook takes d6 played. What a move. What a tactical sequence here. And black's king is in big trouble. This knight is now under attack a second time. So I didn't actually see rook takes d6 when I said, hey, maybe that knight on d7 needs to stay there. But now it's played. The queen's under attack, and the threat is just to take on f6 if the pawn takes the rook.
I mean, Janusz is definitely, playing the best moves in this position. Wow, that is a very, very impressive tactic.
How is this player 2060 FIDE? This could be one of those situations where just not playing enough over the board chess, because this is a monster game right now against a 2400 IM. The numbers you see on screen here are the Chess.com ratings in this time patrol, but they're FIDE ratings over the board chess official tournaments. 2061 for white and 2399 for black. And by the way, look at black's clock. How do you expect to survive with no time remaining?
And a worse position. And we also have to remember Muhammad Ali is very, very strong. He's very strong national master who just beat Carissa Ip the previous round.
You just said Muhammad Ali is very strong, and that just is like one of the truest statements that could ever
true.
be said.
I'm not wrong.
Yes, yeah. Muhammad Lutfi Ali here is a great player, and the king is open 35 seconds. Do you have to play like queen takes d6? That can't work. I just take your queen.
This would you rather lose going down in flames, or would you rather lose a very painful death? You know, in a very painful.
White needs to play quickly. Just put the pressure not just on the board but on the clock. And oh wow, rook c7. There's no way this survives. Queen takes e6. Leave the bishop there. Bring the queen in. You're going to deliver a checkmate against this king. Oftentimes we rush by taking this bishop, but the bishop is not going anywhere, and this helps the king escape. Look at, oh my goodness.
Wait, he's just playing perfect chess.
Oh my goodness.
You know what? Like, he's just playing perfectly.
Is this like, are we watching like a grandmaster in the making right now? Because I take everything I've said in previous rounds back. This is the game of the turn. This mate takes, queen f6 check, king goes to g8, the queen lands on f8 with mate. He's going to, oh my gosh.
Some impressive tactics, and he must have done puzzle rush. I just want to say, this guy has done his puzzle rush.
It's mate. I mean, this is one of the best games I've ever seen. This was a phenomenal. Rook takes d6. Oh, it came out of nowhere.
I want that to be puzzle of the day for tomorrow.
Just this. I mean, tweet about it. Put in every article about this tournament. I don't even want to change boards. I know there are other games going on because this was a masterpiece. Congratulations to Janusz Kudelka there. That's a beautiful victory, a smashing victory. We are going to change games because there are other games to look at. I see this one here. International Master Bogdan Viranu is with the white pieces up all the pawns here. So this is Goldman Sachs taking on Microsoft Redmond. Goldman Sachs with the white pieces. International Master Max Risky from Microsoft Redmond with the black pieces. And this is checkmate next move. So it's going to be a win on this board for Goldman Sachs. And we'll just let the game, I think he's going to resign right now. I want to take our attention to this other game between Ziquan and Francisco Rambaldi, because that game, I will leave this one. This one's over. Let's go to the other one because that is fascinating. Ziquan, the international master with the black pieces against Grandmaster Rambaldi. Rambaldi brings the rook up to defend the king so that there's no check. But black's position, it says the engines is a little bit better. I don't think either player knows. And with 45 seconds, Nemo, it's anyone's game.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I definitely do think that the Grandmaster has a little bit more experience probably in these kind of shorter time control scrambles, but White's position is also slightly uncomfortable. When you got your king under attack, it's, you know, he has compensation for it for sure, which is why the position is still equal. He has that passed pawn, but any check.
Oh, the queen! Down goes the queen! The rook is protected!
We see him smack his face. He just... That is a Boda's Gambit. That is a Boda's Gambit in the FIDE Online World Corporate Chess Championship.
Queen D1, that's the problem, is if you had one more move to play knight E3, you could possibly hold a draw, but no, the rook's under attack, the knight's under attack, the king is in check, rook E2 would be the only move, and a resignation, and off camera.
And he has just rage quit.
Oh my gosh, and what a turn of events. Goldman Sachs wins on these two boards. Let's see if they have other boards remaining right now, because Microsoft Redmond looked like they were unstoppable, and that's 2 wins there for Goldman Sachs. I'm just trying to see where the other games are, and here we are. This is Goldman Sachs, the black pieces. Whoa, they might take this game too. They're winning on this board.
Wow, okay, so this might be an upset, and this might actually take Microsoft Redmond's first place spot away as we're going into the last round, next game.
I mean, this is just winning for black. You just bring the king over. This pawn is pushing. Your king can actually even go towards the enemy king and try to deliver a checkmate. Just b3 now. Just push that pawn. Or play king e3. Bring your king in. And this is completely winning for black. What happened on board 4? I'm trying to find out what happened there, because it looks like Microsoft Redmond, Megan Lee won on board 4. She was much higher rated than her opponent. But this is going to be a 3-1 match victory. Rook a1 is going to be.
Oh, that's just, yeah. Well, I mean, there's bishop to d1, but
and then just waste a turn.
Yeah, you just play king to d3, and you actually have white in Zugzwang, and you'll get rook takes d1 coming up.
Wow. So it is 3-1 for Goldman Sachs team. That is huge turn of events. Microsoft Redmond, they still have a chance. We'll see how the standings play out, but there are still more games left that we want to look at here. This is the American Express matchup. We have Mark Ginsburg. Whoa, what's happening here? Just winning a piece, but unfortunately, two bishops against one bishop, even if those pawns are lost, would be a draw. So only black can realistically play for a win here. And it's not that realistic. Those pawns are stopped. Looks just like a draw.
Yeah.
And if you want as white to make a draw, you just take. But I think white's playing for a win. And look at the clock, by the way. This is kind of tricky with no time.
I mean, even if you take both of the pawns, the dark square bishop will still make sure that white can't get the win.
So bishop, king f2, bishop d4 check. That's what I expect to happen. So king f2, okay. Be careful because this black king could kind of get checkmated if you're like, look at this. If this king goes to f1 and I bring my bishop to f2, okay, that was a smart move. Like running away from the boundary. You don't want to walk into some kind of checkmate. So I think this has been a good choice. Oh my gosh. This is just, don't blunder your bishop for black. Yeah, put that bishop all the way over there. That way you can't hang it. And this should never be a decisive game.
Mm-hmm. I'm still kind of in shock, that we saw a grandmaster rage quit.
Don't play g3. Be careful. Bishop e7 and bishop g2 is mate. You need to do something to bishop e7, bishop g2.
Wait, he just let bishop e7 happen.
Oh my gosh. It's mate. It's mate. Oh my gosh, that's devastating. It's the only way is your king. Oh, it's checkmate. Oh, I can't even imagine how this player feels because there was looking like no way to lose this game and walked right into a checkmate here.
I actually know exactly how this feels because I've done this before, but
And the thing is, I was saying is that even if you don't have, especially if you don't have the pawns, there's no way to lose. The only way to lose is if you have the pawns. Without the pawns here, if bishop g2, the king comes to h2. You can't mate me. I'm not going to let you. But unfortunately, the bishop on e7 is here, taking away the square, and that's checkmate. We can look at this more later. I see another game going on, so I'm going to pull it up between Oksana Golubeva and, well, it's an extra.
That would have been one of the cases where actually not having those pawns would have benefited black.
Wow, just what a
that was one game for sure.
What a series of games we saw there. I don't know what to say. We saw that smashing victory from Airbnb. We saw
Goldman,
Francesco Rambaldi just cannot, in disbelief, turning off the camera, leaving. How could I lose that game? And then we just saw that checkmate where none looked like it should existed, and yet the king got kind of smothered in by its own pawn. So what a round we just had. That was exciting. And we see the scores here. Goldman Sachs takes down Microsoft Redmond 3-1, surprising considering the Grandmaster led lineup for Microsoft Redmond. Wow. Anna Huak there, 4-0 over the Farber group. 4-0. That's a sweep in the penultimate round. Workday and Deloitte Chicago split 2-2. Hey, that's your compatriot, Svetlana Dimchenko.
Yes, that is. That most certainly is.
Well, she drew her game against an international master, so that's a great performance for her. The teams tied 2-2. Airbnb California, despite the game of the tournament by Janusz Kudelka, they actually lose the match 2.5, 1.5, and maybe that early draw by PT, that might have been a smart move because boards 3 and 4 for that lineup is so powerful, and they move to continue in first place, move on past Airbnb California. American Express says, well, Deloitte New York, you can't handle this. We saw that checkmate by Mark Ginsburg to lead them to a perfect sweep. And then Amazon US West bounces back after the loss to Airbnb California. They win 3.5 over Asentel there. So, oh my gosh, Nemo. We just were screaming.
Some exciting games this round.
We really have. I mean, we are treated. It's been a delight. I don't even know what to say. I am so appreciative of the opportunity. The results are coming in here. We will have those up shortly for you all, just to remind you who's at the top, who's playing for first place, because even if one team's in first, there may be only one board point or half a board point. So you never know who will come out on top. And for Microsoft Redmond, they have to be disappointed by that defeat. And if you're Goldman Sachs, you're just jubilant because that was a lineup that you should be at a disadvantage against. You have your two IMs at the top, but then you're playing a GM and IM. So you're like, wait, our stacked top not going to work out. And yeah, it actually did. The IM for Goldman Sachs beats the GM for Microsoft Redmond, and the other IM matchup for Goldman Sachs wins that one. So Nemo, you played in many team events. Sometimes disadvantages on paper, it's a single game. Anything can happen.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, literally anything can happen. We've seen grandmasters lose to international masters draw, untitled players. But like, once again, you're playing the board, you're playing the position.
That is true. So I'm being told, well, Nemo, we need to take a break because we were overexcited. That's not the reason why. There's just no time between this end of this round and the next one. The next round is the final round of the preliminary stage, the group stage. Only one team from each group will move on. And there are two groups here. There's Group A and Group B. We will come back. We'll go over the standings, talk about matchups, review a few games that we just witnessed, and we'll be in for more exciting chess in this event. It's been fun. There's one more round to go. The playoffs are tomorrow of the FIDE World Corporate Chess Challenge. return with the standings from the Group West A and Group West B. You see in front of you, only one team makes it out of each group. So Nemo, we see Anahuac there in first place. They are going to face off against Goldman Sachs, but that's a 2.5 point spread. So that means Goldman Sachs will need to beat them by at least the score 3.5. And based on how well Anahuac has played to this point, I see your face. You don't think it's too likely.
Yeah, I mean, it was last game. I thought, Microsoft Redmond had the whole win, had everything, but a lot of things can happen in just one round, and now we actually see Anahuac and Goldman Sachs above Microsoft Redmond. Microsoft Redmond has been leading for the first 4 rounds of the tournament, but anything can happen in these kind of events.
That's true. And in the Group B, we see that PT, they've been leading throughout. They've won all 5 of their matches. You get 2 points for a match win. So if you look at Group A, Goldman Sachs has also won all 5 of their matches. They've just been winning by smaller margins, and that's why they're behind a team that's drawn a match. And if we remind our viewers what just happened in the previous round, there was that upset. Microsoft Redmond, they were in first place. They lose 3-1 to Goldman Sachs. And then look at Anahuac there. The second board, they won 4-0. So they were able to leapfrog some of the other competitors with that monstrous score. And Goldman Sachs will face off against Anahuac there. And Microsoft Redmond also has a chance, but they need to rely now on Goldman Sachs.
Yep.
And you never want to be in that place, right? We've all been in events where, if it's an individual event, you just want to be controlling your own destiny. But when we play chess, most of the time it is individual. If you play for teams, Nemo, I know you have, of course, then you're on a team, you're like, wait, it's a big event. Like, I need to rely on these other results of my teammates, or maybe some other teams can help us place better. It's a really uncomfortable feeling.
Yeah, I mean, I actually have always wanted chess to be more of a team event than an individual event. But sometimes at the same time, it's actually okay to have individual events too. So honestly, this tournament has been very, very enlightening, and there's been a lot of very interesting games. A lot of these team dynamics have been really crazy to look at, and seeing teams bounce back from losses or get completely 4-0 in a totally unexpected event has just been pretty crazy to see.
For sure. And you said a lot of great games, so we might as well pull up some of them while we have some time between rounds. The next round will not begin until 11:30 Eastern time, so we still have half an hour. And pulled up some interesting moments, some games here. And I just had this position, Johan Helston, the Grandmaster, with the white pieces. And you look at this position, King's Indian type of position, but the bishop's on E7. So this is a Bogo Indian instead. If it's going to be King's Indian, the bishop's on G7. So it may be familiar to some of our viewers, though the specific position may not be the same as has been previously seen. But anyway, just like in some King's Indian positions, C6 was the choice. And Nemo, that move makes perfect sense. You're trying to gain some space, but look what White did here. And D takes E6, B takes 6, and C5, trying to undermine the pawn. So my question for you, Nemo, is how do people get better at recognizing moments to make a move like C5?
Well, I think the trick is honestly when you don't have a better move, when the position's kind of close, you need to look for some kind of breakthrough. And C5 is the sort of move that you're looking for if you want to find a way to break through in the center of the board. In this case, you have to figure out where your pieces want to go. C4 looks like a very logical square for the knight. You want to attack the E5 pawn at some point, so bishop B2 if black, doesn't take on C5 immediately.
That's right. You're just opening up the entire board for your pieces. And something I like to say, and if we just backtrack a second, a pawn chain is only as strong as its base pawn. So this pawn chain here is actually quite strong. It's hard to get to C7, but look what happens. Now the pawn chain, it shrinks, and you play C5. That's the base of this mini pawn chain. And after takes, knight takes E5, black play queen C7. And look at this move. Knight takes C6. Give me that pawn. Because when you take back B5 with the fork, and it was just a series of trades. White actually isn't even winning material at this point, but White's advantage is tremendous because look at this bishop on E7, blockaded by a pawn. This knight on C4, thematic, blockading the pawn, taking control of many squares on the board. You mentioned bishop coming to B2 at some point. The bishop can also stay on its current diagonal. So it's just a nice transition for White. So very instructive stuff, I would say, from Grandmaster Helston.
Yeah, and as a reminder for everybody, using a knight to block a pass pawn is the best way to block a pass pawn because even if the knight's there, even if it's kind of stuck to the c4 square, you are still controlling pretty much 8 squares in this case around the pawn. So still a very, very Chad knight.
Yeah, it ventures into black's position while doing a good job of not allowing that pawn to get forward. And the game from here was in white's favor, but that was the important moment that I wanted to highlight. So we also have some, instead of positional ideas, we have some tactical ones. And I like this game. We're going to start from move one. International master Krishna GV plays this one with e4, c5. We know we're tend to get sharp positions out of the Sicilian, and especially with the move g6, a dragon-like move. And something I always say, but I think that it's hard for people to know when to do this. When I see a fianchetto pawn structure, pawn g6, I say always think about, but don't always play the move h4. So how do you know when to time a decision like this?
Well, h4 is usually never a great move when it's so early in the opening. As we do know, this is actually we're going right into accelerated dragon theory if white plays d4 here. If you're going to play a move like h4, well, you better be sure that you're not going to be castling on the king side.
Yes, and I think White made very sure that because after h4, knight f6, saying, okay, you're not going to play h5. Now my knight can just take you. Says, yeah, try again. I'm going to do it and sacrifice the rook for the knight, which is a known type of idea in many different positions and some Dutch positions. Sometimes White sacrifices the exchange. So Black has taken a pawn and a rook for just a knight. But look at how quickly White jumps in. Knight to g5. The idea is clear. Let me get my queen out. Black, I think, fends off well, bishop h6. d4 played, take my pawn. Have my pawn. I'm trying to get after f7, get after h5, and go for checkmate. And once again, black responds well with bishop takes, and here's the mistake. And this is wild that this is a mistake because knight takes d4 looks like such a good move, but look at that eval bar, whoop, goes up in white's favor. It's trying to find stuff, going with more
Wait,
depth.
what is the rating? What is the rating of these two players? I'm just a little bit confused right now because I've never seen a move like h4 h5 so early in the
And
Sicilian before.
White is an international master, so this was played with just devious intentions, saying, I'm just going to take it. I'm going to look at the rating for the player with the black pieces, just so I can get that. 1 second. And
Mm-hmm.
it is an FM, right? 2304. So it's a 2400 versus a 2300 in this game. Two very strong players. And knight takes d4. That looks like a natural move. I don't want to double my pawns, but you're bringing your pieces away from your king safety. So look at how white follows this up with knight d5, hitting e7, knight back to c6. Wait, oh, I didn't really want to spend all the time with my knight. My pieces aren't developing. Queen takes h5, right into the action. d6, castle's queenside. All right, maybe not the most precise move, but look, the engine goes back up, starting to like white's position, and bam, knight takes e7.
Ooh.
Knight takes check, bishop d7. You can't play king to h8, f8 rather, because you're about to get checkmated. Your king goes that way. I'm going to deliver a check on right here. You go rook takes. You can go rook takes d6 with bishop f6, queen h6. You're just trying to get this king. Just
This is a one very special opening. Okay, I'm definitely going to be trying this out in my own games for sure.
yeah, it's just a really just wild position where even sacrifices are possible everywhere. So here you see the king is just getting hunted, and that's why bishop d7 was played, but rook takes d6, and we get a trade. Two rooks for black and a bishop or a knight for a queen. But look at this move, bishop f6, hitting the rook, tactics everywhere in white's favor. Queen takes c5. And the reason why this knight went here is queen takes c5 is happening regardless, hitting this knight and this bishop double attack. So moving the rook away doesn't solve all the problems. And that's why this happened. Says, I'll give up you the rook in the corner, takes the other rook, and finally white pushes some pawns and goes f5 and queen d4 check. So it's just too many extra pawns with the queen and the weak king.
Yeah, this was one very crazy game for sure.
Just wild stuff. h4, h5 like it's nothing. Just any other game. No big deal.
I wonder if he prepared the theory for this or if it's a trick he specifically uses in some occasions.
Probably just in this rapid time control. If you do this in a classical game, it could really backfire because if we go back to this moment here, look at the evaluation bar. It's in black's favor, not overwhelmingly so, but in black's favor. And pawn takes d4 would have been a better way to capture because your knight is there. And look, I mean, it's such a complicated position that the engine trying to look deeper and deeper, changing a bit, but ultimately it likes black's chances with the extra material. But we know that white has compensation. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
So this game was a fantastic tactical one. We're going to go to this match here, and I'm at the end. I was trying to find an earlier position around these parts here because this is an Anhawak game with the black pieces, and it looks like it's all good, all fine, because it's knight, rook, and 4 pawns each. How do you avoid just looking at the material and saying this must be a draw? How do you try to get yourself in the mindset that no results oriented thinking, we got to play the moves? How do you do that in a position like this?
Wait, you're able to play positions without results oriented?
Yes, every now and then I am able to make it work.
Whenever I play these kind of positions, I'm just like, I know this is a draw. Which is actually a dangerous mindset to sometimes get into, because then you sort of lose your focus and you potentially lose the position because you just kind of play whatever moves, assuming it's going to be a draw. However, in these positions, you do have to consider that there are actually dynamics involved. For black, that would mean getting the rook to d2, just trying to take control of the d file. White probably has to respond with a move like rook c2 just to not let that happen, right?
Right.
We do not like rooks on the 7th or 2nd ranks because that is the most important file to put your rook on.
Yeah, I think that at first glance, most people say, it's just equal. You ask any top player, highly rated player, it's no big deal. But one of the things also is that this pawn structure for white with the pawns on light squares, it leaves the dark squares vulnerable. And say, well, there's no bishop. What do you mean the dark squares are vulnerable? But let's look what happens. Because g5 is played, taking control of the dark squares. King g7, all this seems normal. And after rook b7, the rook's in an attacking posture. But look at this, h5, rook to d2. Now there's an attack this way and an attack this way. So actually, white blundered on the spot here, but it's because it's a hard position to play. Your knight doesn't really have anywhere good to go. And black is pushing pawns up. This rook is coming to d2 anyway. This king could be in trouble. So rook d2, steal 1 pawn, go back. And this move is really nice. I just want to point this out for everybody. Rook takes b6. It looks like a free pawn, but you're not going to be holding this because you lose this pawn a2. And now I'm threatening rook a3 to pin this knight. I have h4 check. Your king has to go back to h2. There could be a checkmate on the horizon based on how active black is.
And don't forget, even with rook a3, right, you're pinning the knight. So that king has to move or the knight has to move. A lot of very scary things can happen. I can just envision a mating net right now.
Yes, and it's just kind of wild how it was even before. Even material, not that many pawns left. Now it's 1 extra pawn. And knight and pawn in games are very similar to king and pawn in games. So that 1 extra pawn can make a big difference. And, well, after this, the king went back to h2. Time trouble ensued. And this rook just said, your knight's not going anywhere. And look at this, by the way. h4. Please take my pawn on b6. Have that pawn. I dare you. Because black would play g4. And this king is getting checkmated. If in the g3 check, rook d1 is mate on the back rank, and taking also suffers the same fate because the knight takes away the escape squares. It's amazing how quickly a neutral looking position can turn into an attacking one.
Yeah, this shows some very, very nice technique from black. Once again, you got to remember, even if it's an end game, you can't just try to wait your way through. Sometimes your opponent does genuinely have threats, especially when you see your opponent's pawns coming towards you. Do be very careful because rook and knight can be very tricky.
And the game concluded in just a few moves. Sorry, that's my analysis. But here, after the knight came back, rook e3. Keep chasing the knight, rook e2. Knight d4, rook d2. And finally, your knight is out of options because if the knight moves to b3, that looks, hey, that's safe. Knight f3 check. The pawn is pinned, the king is only 1 square, and rook d1 is actually checkmate. So the attack is real. Just because there are no queens doesn't necessarily mean your king is safe. And that's why after rook to d2, rook takes b6, but now I'm up a piece. So it went from just, come on, it has to be a draw, right? To, wait a second, white's king's a little bit of danger. Whoa, that knight doesn't have anywhere good to go. And suddenly, Black was able to win this game.
Yeah.
So that was a fun one, and just one.
Pretty instructive game too.
Yeah, it really was, and just very different style than the ones we just looked at, especially that rook takes h5 sacrifice, the exchange sacrifice. And speaking of sacrifices, we have to go back to this game. How could I not show it one more time? We were freaking out, Nemo. And look at the engine evaluation, minus 1.75. There's no
I'm
way.
still, yeah, this game, I was just like, White is definitely built different. Like, it's just, well, he's not even better, but he somehow just managed to turn this position into a win.
And it goes to show that when your king can't castle very easily, right? If this king ever goes this way, well, watch out. I'm still going to attack you. You're missing a G pawn. The position is open. So C5 was played, going to attack on the queen side, and then E5, which gives up the rook on H1, which says you can have that rook. I can go E6, or I can go knight E6, as happened in the game, because after C takes D4, here, have my bishop on E3 or my knight on C3. Takes. And it's still, I mean, we were talking about this, Nemo. You're like, okay, it should somehow, you have to take the knight because the queen is trapped, nowhere to go. But it felt like maybe you got some saving grace. And it turns out knight F6 does not work because of the fantastic shot rook takes D6, which means by process of elimination, bishop F6 is a move. And engine, I don't know if I trust it. It's saying that black is better. But bishop f6, as you were saying, that's like not the move you want to play, because you want to keep your bishop to shield the king. And instead, you say, I need the g7 square to escape to. I mean, what a hard move to find.
Yeah, very difficult to find. But this guy has definitely done his puzzle rush, you know, and that's what's getting him these tactics. Even though the engine might not like it, it's very difficult to defend perfectly when you only have a few minutes on the clock. Keep in mind, these are 10-minute plus 2-second games. So he does not have the luxury of spending 15 minutes to find the best move.
Right. In a classical game, perhaps you find a saving move here. It's, look at this. I mean, rook takes d6, probably caught International Master Ali by surprise. And you're just in so much trouble because this knight on f6 is pinned. This knight on b6 is under attack. Your king is wide open. And after it takes, e takes f6, rook c7, trying to defend. Clearly, the engine doesn't like that move. But what else can you play? That looks like a good defensive choice to me. I don't actually see any defense for queen takes e6 or pawn takes g7. The combination of those threats is overwhelming.
Yeah. A lot of very, very interesting tactics coming up. And queen takes e6 does start in checkmate. And, you know, f takes g7, rook f7, and the black king is very close to being checkmated as well.
And that's why I really appreciate this moment. Instead of taking a bishop for just a pawn, double check. So wait a sec, that could help the king escape, because if that king gets out, then the rook can move from h8 to try to help the king. Queen takes e6, you're locked in the corner to that rook. My f6 pawn is protected. The king has no safe moves. And after queen d7, we saw the very quick checkmate on f8. I mean, seriously, a great tactical sequence. Credit to White for finding all these moves. Electric game, and for International Master Ali, you beat some strong players, and sometimes you may be higher rated, but those players can still play. In a given game, anything can happen. So, Nemo, that was a lot of fun. I had a good time looking through these, and I'm going to be seeing these sacrificial ideas in my sleep.
Yeah, for sure. I can't wait to see what round 6 will bring us.
Me neither. It's for all the marbles. Only one team gets through per group. And before we do head to a break and get ready for round 6, just want to thank everybody who's been donating. I see many people. I won't read off all the names. I see actually some grandmasters on this list and some title players. So thank you so much for the donations. We're only $5 off of 7,000. It's for charity, for great FIDE initiatives for people with disabilities, for the veterans of chess, and for chess and education. So thank you so much. Let's try to cross 7,000 if we can. And we will see you soon for the 6th and final round of the group stage of the FIDE World Corporate Championships.
Yep.
And we are heading to the final round of these groups of the FIDE World Corporate Chess Championship. Nemo, it's been a lot of fun. It's probably been very stressful for certain players, and I'm sure exhilarating for others because they've won some nice tactical games. And some people, we haven't seen every single result, but I'm sure some people are way outperforming the rating.
Yeah, for sure. And some people are also performing below their rating, underperforming a little bit. I mean, I usually don't point these out because it's always easier to perform higher than your rating, but it's always a lot more difficult to point out the people who are underperforming. But there are definitely some people who are playing very, very strong and some people who are just not having the best tournament. As we saw the previous round, we saw Francesco actually do a Boda's Gambit, drop his queen, and proceed to turn off the camera. So there will be a lot of very interesting games this round for sure.
And there just could be so much pressure on a board one like that. And we'll see the standings, remind everybody of who's playing for that not top prize, but first place in the group so they can move on to tomorrow's playoff. That if you're Microsoft Redmond and you're Francesco, it's like, okay, I just kind of need to win all the games. I'm expected to win. And chess doesn't work that way. If somebody's playing their best game, there's no guarantees that you defeat them if you're relatively close in strength. So even though Francesco Grandmaster, he was playing a strong international master, and that was a win for the IM. And in Group B there, we see that PT, they just keep on going. They're up 2.5 points over American Express. They won all their matches. So in both divisions, there's a 2.5 point spread.
Yeah, I just want to say, we were expecting a lot of really amazing things from some of the top seeded teams like Microsoft Redmond, Goldman Sachs. I actually would not have expected Anna Huac to be in leading position and in quite literally in first place as we're heading into the last round. Goldman Sachs and Microsoft Redmond looked like they were so close. The Microsoft Redmond unfortunately just had a very, very bad last round.
It's true because Anuak does have a strong team of IM, FM, IM, WIM. So all players are 20 to 30 plus. But Microsoft Redmond just has kind of a stronger version of that team. So you would expect that Microsoft Redmond would continue to win, but they were stopped in their tracks by Goldman Sachs. And now we see the final round pairings. Goldman Sachs takes on Anuak there. And we have Ziquan, the international master, taking on Oscar Gerardo Sanchez. And that game is IM, so a title player matchup there, and it's just title players in the top two boards. And for Goldman Sachs, they have Alexandra Wiener stepping back in, and she's playing on board three. So even though her rating is lower than the board four, she's going to try to do her part, taking on an international master rated 500 points above her. That's going to be a tough match, but she's won all her games at this point.
Wow, that's actually really impressive.
Yes, and Workday, Microsoft Redmond needs to win 4-0. I think that they don't have a chance unless they win every single game in that match, and they do outrate their opponents by quite a bit. But on board one, I see that's an international master Yan Liao against Grandmaster Francesco Ribaldi, so no guarantees. And in the other division, PT, they are playing Amazon US West, and they outrate their opponents by a large margin. So I actually think that PT will make their way through, but you know that American Express is waiting in the wings, hoping that Amazon US West can do something to take down PT because they have a matchup against Airbnb California where they're favored throughout the boards. And if they can win 4-0 and PT stumbles, maybe, just maybe there's a chance.
Yeah, sometimes when you're, reading off these company names and stuff, I'm like, oh, wait, maybe they have beef in person, But of course, these are going to be matches on the chessboard and not in terms of actual corporations.
That's right. You can't just say we'll delay your packages. It's not going to work out in this case. But we do have some great matchups ahead. They're playing for a chance to get to the playoffs, which will begin tomorrow. And overall, there's a title on the line and some prizes. So the winning team, so of the 8 that will play tomorrow knockout, the winning team is declared the FIDE Online World Corporate Chess Champion. The first 4 teams in the final rankings will secure 4 seats. They'll play in a simul against the winner of the candidates. That's not known yet. That will take place or restart in April. And then the 4 players from the highest ranked team not qualified for the playoff stage. So if you don't make the playoffs, you still will have 4 players who will get to play against Ju Jun. That's the FIDE Women's World Champion. And raising money, if you raise the most money, whichever team it is, they will get all accommodation expenses covered for 3 nights and VIP tickets for 3 rounds of the World Championship match. Wow, that's a lot. Many prizes at stake. Generosity is rewarded as well. And hey, there's games in session right now. Let's go to some of them.
Yeah, let's jump into the final round for tonight.
Okay, and actually, Goldman Sachs is on the blackboard, black side of this position, rather, Bogdan Vioranu. And look at Isaac Garcia. With the white pieces, he makes this move rook G1, trying to go for G4 in an attack. But I don't know if that's a good decision. When your team is ahead by 2.5 points, you need to make sure that you score at least 1 point in this match. And then you win. You're done. 1 total point in this match. So playing this kind of style, it feels too risky for my liking.
Yeah, but to be fair, if you're trying to go for a win, what better way than to go absolutely crazy, play an opening your opponent has probably never seen before, and judging by Black's usage of time, 7 minutes, while White almost has perfect time, this could be very interesting for sure.
I agree, and White's clearly prepared this, but White doesn't need it. Black needs to win the game. So I feel like if I'm Bogdan, I'm happy to see this position because a draw and a loss for the team at some point, that's neither here nor there. It's not going to win us the turn. We need to win our games. So to have this kind of position where you're going to have to castle queenside if you castle at all, that feels like it gives Black the chances that he desires to play for a win.
Yeah.
All right. So let's keep on going. We'll look on board 3. This is Alexandra Wiener. Her rating is in the nearly 1800 FIDE, but she's taking on an international master. She is outrated by 500 points, but so far so good on this board. There is a pawn hanging on b2. If you're not careful, you want to make sure that you don't drop that pawn. But the knight on d5 is strong. All of White's pieces are doing well here. I think this is a very nice start for the board 3 for Goldman Sachs.
Yeah, I do think that this is a very difficult position for White to play as well. Black is actually getting the ideal sort of setup coming out of this Sicilian. The bishop is on a very long diagonal. The knight is heading straight to c5. He's primed to play e6. And knight to d4 is not a move that I am particularly a fan of. You're basically setting yourself up for a structurally worse position.
Yeah, I am curious to why the engine really dislikes it because the bishop was hitting the b2 pawn. To me, knight d4 looks very normal. So there must be something hidden here in terms of and bishop takes d4. What's going on here? There's some kind of tactic in the air that I'm just not seeing. It's not coming to me. Oh
I'm
my
trying to
gosh.
think too.
I
Why does
know what
the
it
agent
is.
like this so much for black? I mean, if you just play e5,
It's
um,
e5 is the idea, but first e6. You stop on e6 because where does the knight go? After e6, and this is just obscure. You
wow.
give up your dark square bishop, and e6 was just played, so clearly the IM knows the line. If the knight goes to e3, this pawn can go to e5, and this bishop only has one safe square, but it's only going to stay safe for this turn. The bishop is trapped after the move rook to b7. So you play rook to b7, and that bishop is lost.
That is a very, very beautiful tactic, actually. I mean, I was just looking at the position, and for sure, it looks like maybe that bishop could get trapped, but e6 is one obscure move to find.
Well, it's also bishop takes d4, so you know that Pablo Del Morte saw this e6 e5 idea. Otherwise, bishop takes d4 does not make any sense. But it's all about trapping the bishop. So you can understand completely why Alexandrina would get into this situation. Unfortunately for her, it was an uphill battle to begin with, and now it looks like a piece is going to be lost. And honestly, if Anahawk wins this game, they win the group. That's that. There's no more discussion because they are 2.5 points ahead of Goldman Sachs, which means that Goldman Sachs will not be able to overtake them. I guess Microsoft Redmond, technically, if Anahawk wins this game but loses all the other three, then Microsoft Redmond can win all 4 games and leapfrog them. So there is a chance for Microsoft Redmond, but for Goldman Sachs, if they lose this game, there's no chance left for them.
Yeah, that would be most unfortunate, but we do have to keep in mind this is the sixth game that they are currently playing, so it was not a particularly long tournament, but it is still very much enough to determine a clear winner.
That's right. And I'm going to switch games here. Go to the game with Farid Fermancio, who's had a good tournament, who's an international master playing for the team PT Pelabuhan, and they're playing Airbnb California. And, well, Black's in great shape because the material is even, I'm counting correctly. There's a rook barreling down against the white king, and some may say, wait, but Black doesn't have a pawn on the G file. That should be scary. No, the white king's in far more danger. This queen can land on f2. The rook is on g8. If I play d4 and try to get my bishop at some point to the light squares, that could also be good. And this knight on e5 is the one thing that white can take pride in. But even here, the b2 pawn can be captured since the bishop on e8 covers r7.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those positions that at first glance you might think that white is a lot better because you have a queen on h6. It's aimed right at black's king. However, how do you even continue your attack? You need to be able to rook lift, but after queen takes b2 followed by queen takes c2, white actually has to deal with the checkmate threat before white is able even to threaten rook d3, rook h3, and h7.
And we're getting word that Microsoft won board 4. If that's correct, well, that's a good start for the team from Microsoft. They need to win all of their games to have any chance. So let's keep on going. We have this game here by Masuri Rahman. And wow, there's a king on f7. White has once again, looks like given up in exchange on the h5 square. So we saw a game like that in the previous round. The king on f7, Nemo, queen h8, I think is a very good defensive move. Do you think that white is going to be happy about this? Because it looks to me like the queen is being traded off by force.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, thank you very much, Josh, for the raid. We're currently here. Welcome, everybody. We're doing commentary on the FIDE FIDE Online World Corporate Chess Championship. It's a mouthful for sure, but welcome, everybody. It is the last round, and these games are just getting more and more intense.
They are. And, well, the teams have so much at stake that the nerves are probably felt across the companies, their teammates, not just people on the chess team, but their colleagues maybe watching, rooting them on. And right now, this game here, very interesting. White hasn't moved. The queen cannot stay on the board, it doesn't look like to me, because there's no way back for the queen, and the queen trade is offered. So what's the material count? Currently, White has a knight and one pawn for a rook. And I'm noticing that this pawn on c7 can be captured at some moment. So it seems to me that White does have sufficient compensation. I'm just worried about the long term because once the queens come off, maybe those rooks will shine.
Yeah, I do think that this is one of those positions where playing black should be a little bit more difficult. But where does White's attack even go after the queens get traded? Pretty much, that's where it all fizzes up. So unfortunately, even though the engine does say it's equal, it is a little bit difficult to play right now, but only momentarily for black.
That's right. So we'll see how this one continues. We'll just bop around some more, just check around, see the other games. And what is happening here? We have Midhun Unikrishnan taking on Xenia Corrales Jimenez. And what's this? It looks like black has no even pawns. I just saw a bunch of double pawns, so I assume black was up one, but with a bad structure. No, it's even pawns, 6 pawns per side. The rook just gets active. Black's pawn structure not
That
looking
is an
great.
awful pawn structure. That is 3 pawn islands to White's 2 pawn islands. Even though he does have the bishop in this situation, the pawn islands are really, really important in games because you need those pawn islands. Well, you need pawns to create pass pawns, right? And all of them are just doubled. Then you have less chances to create pass pawns, quite
That's
simply.
that's true. The problem for white, no open file for her rook, whereas black's rook on h2, very powerful, restricting the king. So it's king is stuck on the first rank. This knight on f5 looks great, but it can't go anywhere. If you go to d4, e3, and e7, the bishop can take it. So it should be a slight advantage for white, but it's going to be a lot to prove. Going to quickly go on over to another game just because I've heard it is interesting and we don't want to miss any interesting action. There are so many interesting games to take into account. This, of course, the person who I'm trying to follow has uh, been seen many times. So here we go. It is Francesco Rambaldi. And just a couple moves ago, you may see, wait, this looks like a normal position. Why are you talking about this? There's no H pawn. So just 2 moves ago, after
Well,
C4 was played, bishop takes H2.
Francesco is going for the attack. He lost the queen last game, but that's not going to stop him. Actually, I think if you lose a queen, your previous game, you're more likely to want to go on the offensive, right? Your next game, because you just have to win.
And it just looks great because your queen would land on h3. There's going to be a checkmating attack, and white goes knight to d2 to play bishop f3. That's clearly not the right way to go based on the engine's valuation. Probably taking on h3. This looks really bad to me. I mean, the engine, it's not sure. It's not sure. To my eyes, this looks terrible for white. I would not be able to play this kind of move. This rook is coming to e4 and over to g4 checkmate. The bishop, the queen all teaming up. This can't reasonably expect somebody to find this in a game with 10 minutes on the clock. So after the capture, it just went back and now blocks up a clean pawn. So this is a good position for Microsoft Redmond. He's playing International Master. It's a strong player. And now blocks up a pawn, up a couple minutes. Should be good. Let's go on back to some of the other games. I'm actually going to take our attention to this one here between Isaac Garcia and Bogdan Viranu. We saw the rook g1, g4, g5, and it looks like there could be an attack, but maybe not. And if you don't attack, what are you going to do with your king on e1, Nemo?
I don't even know, actually. I mean, some people really like keeping their kings in the center and never castling and just marching their kings straight up the board. But usually when you're playing against an international master, that is not the best idea.
No, it doesn't look very good right now after the pawn was just captured b4. If you take back, in comes this knight hitting d3, hitting the queen. So black is now up a pawn, and bishop takes c8 was played, and I guess knight f5 is the follow-up, but then the queen slides up to e6. I don't see where white really lands the punches because you traded off your bishops. You are now down a pawn, and the attack doesn't seem that clear to me.
Yeah, and I do think that, when you're trying to attack, you really do need full control of the center before you're able to do it, because otherwise the whole position comes crashing down the moment your opponent starts attacking your king. And the thing is, a lot of players just kind of start the attack and they don't really think about the center of the board. And that's a mistake that I see at all levels, not just at the international master level, at lower levels too.
That's right, because sometimes the best way to counter an attack on the flank is by countering in the center. So we see that the pawn before is captured, that knight would like to grab the pawn if white takes it and puts pressure on the d3 pawn, and the king's still in the center. There's never going to be a safe way to go for this white king, so perhaps it's just going to stay in the middle for the time being. So let's go on over. I just out of the corner of my eye saw this game here where there's a queen on f2, and it looks like for Anahuac here against Goldman Sachs, well, Anahuac's going to win this game because you're up a piece, you're an international master, you have the enemy's king in the corner, you have a passed pawn. Doesn't really look like there's much to be concerned about, but I feel like I'm going to say that, and then something's going to change any second.
Well, I mean, black is just up a bishop, so I hardly think that there will be anything white can do in this position, but keeping our fingers crossed for no blunders.
So if Anahuac gets this and one other game, they will win the group and move on to tomorrow. It seems like it's clear that they are the team to beat. Or I guess they're not going to be beaten in this group. So they will move on to join the 6 teams from earlier. Remains to be seen in the other group what's going to happen. So let's just try to check out some of those games. We have Mohamed Lutfi Ali trying to bounce back after that loss, a round to go. And what's happening here, Nemo? White is not... Nope, white's up a pawn. Extra pawn. And black's king is less safe than white's king. So I think it's pretty clear that white has a big advantage.
Yeah, for sure. I think that white is just like killing black's position because then knight on f8 has no future. After either rook takes d5, and now the queen has to move as well. And after you swap off the g7 bishop, black's entire king is going to be very exposed.
And I think knight g5 might trap the queen, funnily enough.
Oh yeah, that too. Sorry, I didn't even notice that.
I didn't either, but then the eval bar went up, so I was like, okay, what's going on here? Like bishop takes g7 is good, but it's not that good. And then knight g5, I guess, just traps the queen in its place, and yeah, that's a problem. This looks already like a bad position. It's just going to get worse. So that means that PT is going to make it through from their group. I believe that with this victory, that will already push them through.
Definitely a position I would prefer playing white in. I wonder if white's going to spot this knight g5 move. He is thinking a little bit here, so hopefully he sees it.
Oh gosh. I got to pull this other game up. The final position here, checkmate with the rook and the knight. We saw it before. Black's pawn structure wasn't great, but that's actually a checkmate. The last moves here, check this out.
How did that happen?
At this point, white's better, a little more active, better pawn structure, 2-on-1 on the king side. The rook came back, the king slid over, and here we go. Right here, rook h5 after knight g7 just left the control of the e8 square, so rook h8 was mandatory. Instead, rook h3 was played, and sadly, that resulted in checkmate.
Oh, I've seen too many rook and knight checkmates tonight. I think this is like the 3rd or 4th one I've seen, actually, and it's just painful to get checkmated like that, especially when you know it is most likely a draw.
And white's position was looking good because of that extra pawn on the king's side, and the bishop couldn't figure out a way to deal with the impending c5 threat. So it happens. It's unfortunate for the play with the black pieces, but you move on, play more chess. And let's see, where can we go to from here? The king's in the corner. Now it's starting to look scary for black. Bishop went to b4, hitting this knight. Maybe at some point consider taking that knight. h6. All of a sudden, white's attack. Now you know why he played this opening.
I mean, I'm not sure I want to say this is why white should play the opening, because I definitely feel like black went wrong somewhere here. The king is actually looking surprisingly safe on e2. Just because...
in the center.
Yeah. You know, maybe sometimes king in the center is actually not that bad.
Okay, why don't you teach that to your students and then see what they say? Yeah. Oh, Nemo said that king in the center is okay.
I don't even need to teach them that. They already just do it. Some people just refuse to move their king out of the center. And at this point, I've just accepted that fact. And, you know, they can do whatever they want to do. It's not my problem anymore. I've told them I've done my best.
That's true. And these players study a lot of chess, so they can sometimes get away with principles being broken, you know, playing the king in the center. And it looks like there must be a mate. I just saw that bar skyrocket. Where is the checkmate? Rook d2 is not a threat. So if there's not even a check for black, it gives you time to probably just take on h7, threatening queen g7 and queen g8 checkmate.
Well, this game just proves sometimes that king in the center is okay. I can't wait for my student to pull up this game when I'm telling him to, play safe, castle first, then set up your attack. He's going to just literally pull out the Uno reverse card and this game will be on that card.
Yeah, exactly. And this game is about to be over. It's going to be a win for Anahawk. They're making their way through. They are winning their group. And yes, Anahawk did clinch, and they may win all 4 games. Like, they might not just make it through. They might sweep this Goldman Sachs team and say, this was never in doubt. We're winning this group by a large margin.
This is once again something that once again this is the last game in the qualifier. Okay, and white does actually checkmate quite beautifully, might I add.
They win, I believe, 4-0. Let's go on to the other group because their games are still going. Muhammad Lutfi Ali here won the queen earlier. Black is still fighting, and with this time scramble ensuing, I feel like black actually has some chances. If somehow you can arrange your pieces to win this pawn, that's why bishop g5 was played. Rook e7 next, try to grab this pawn, maybe put this pawn e3 for black. I actually do think that there are some chances here to survive.
When you say there are some chances in this position to survive, the engine, the eval bar definitely does not agree with you. That +6 does look very, very nice for white, and I do have to think that white is not only just playing queen and rook for very good compensation. He also has chances to just annoy black's king, and with only a few seconds on the clock, it's very difficult to deal with all these kind of tactics as you're playing under time pressure.
And look at that move. Rook f7 play knight e5, great move. And this rook on d8 is under attack twice, so you can take there. You can take this knight on e5, but black not phased, at least not yet.
Oh, the rook takes d8. Okay, there we go.
And that's what you need to win that game. So finally, the material is clear. And
as long as we don't see any queen blunders.
I have a hard time imagining we will see a queen blunder. Just take this pawn, and then you can even give up your queen for the rook and then win the pawn in a game, but there's no reason to do that. So let's move on to a game here, which looks really wild. I'm going to pull up this one where Chelsea Monica, the board 4 for the PT team, she has black here, and if she can keep this passed pawn, she's doing well. But wait a sec, the rooks cannot keep the pawn.
Oh no! Wait!
No,
it's not that bad. It's not that bad. At least she doesn't lose.
Oh god.
She's somehow still winning this because the knight would just come over now.
Wow, it turned very quickly, and now it's just completely winning. Where taking on d3, you just take. How many pawns is black up? Only 2.
Well, black has 4 pawns for 2. Yeah. Okay. Well, this is just completely winning.
That was a whirlwind, a flurry of tactics.
In 2 moves, we saw the evil bar go. Brr.
Yeah, it was down. It was very advantageous for black. Then all of a sudden it went down to like half a pawn, and then it went right back up again. And that's what happens when your opponent is down to their final seconds. And what a wild finish there. And we have another game we were looking at earlier, Francesco Rambaldi. He won that pawn on h3. He's still up the h pawn. Look at this. If you take the pawn, the bishop would have been trapped on h7. So that's a Bobby Fischer, Boris Spassky tactic for you.
Rambaldi is playing this position very solidly. Both players only have 5 seconds, but I think like pair bishops for a pawn is not the worst, like it's very difficult to play against pair bishops because they do control most of the board. And as you know, if the pawns all just get swapped off, this is a draw.
That's right. And bishop d3, don't take that knight on f5. You may be able to capture it at some moment, but you shouldn't do that too soon because black is up a pawn. So trading down for white is not what you want. So king is just going back and forth, shuffling around. It doesn't seem like there's much progress he made just yet, but in a bullet scramble, there could be some chance. Oh, no. Okay. If you take on
some chances. Nope.
That was a smart move, though. 98.
Oh, wait. What if we see that bishop checkmate again? Do you remember that one?
Yeah, I do remember it, of course. Not possible here. We could see somebody lose on time, though.
We're cheering for somebody to mess up.
We
I like
just
this mentality.
we just came from here. Now there's knight coming to e8 to offer a bishop trade. If white can give up the dark square bishop for the knight, opposite colored bishops will be an easy draw. So they're kind of shuffling around Rambaldi, trying to get that knight in somewhere, somehow.
I think Rambaldi is gonna try too hard to win this game. I mean, like the G pawn is just hanging. There's nothing he can do. The king, he is trying to win because he is 2578. He's a very strong grandmaster. He's playing an international master who I'm sure is underrated. Okay, well this is just turning into a draw.
Yes.
Uh,
You can even take the pawn and take the other pawn.
That'll be a draw too. There are a lot of ways to draw this position.
Knight g5 check. We'll just trade so it doesn't win anything.
I think this is a rather disappointing finish for Francesco. He did lose his last game. You guys missed the part where he actually did a bonus gambit, blundered his queen, and then proceeded to turn off his camera.
Yes.
So, not the best night for him for sure. And unfortunately, his team will not be making it into the playoffs for tomorrow.
Nope, they will not. But it's a tough task. You're a grandmaster, but you just can't win every single game, and that's kind of the pressure that can be on you, especially when you're chasing the leaders. It wouldn't have made a difference. Anawak was just completely dominant in that final round, won 4-0 over Goldman Sachs. So the tournament standings should be just about over. And if I'm not mistaken, we have the playoff bracket ready to show. So these are the 8 teams that have made it in. And we have Granke Bank taking on Anawak. We have Morgan Stanley Hungary. We have against PT down there. We have Spare taking on ERG, and we have Sparebank Trade Union taking on Emphy Solutions. So we have 8 teams working their way toward the championship. I've been covering every single match, and I cannot tell you who the favorite is.
Yeah. And actually, it's very interesting to note that the team that had Magnus Carlsen on it, Kindred, is actually not in the playoff stage. So, just because you have the world champion doesn't even mean sometimes your team gets to make it into the playoffs. And that's just the reality of chess. That's the reality when it is a team tournament. And as a final reminder, this is the FIDE Online World Corporate Chess Championship. Each team is required to have at least one male and one female, and they're also allowed to have one player who is not an employee at the company.
That's right. And well, since we're heading into the playoffs in stage 2, we might as well show the information for everyone to see. So the top team from each group, we've been talking about that, goes to the playoff. It's 8 teams in total. For the pairings, this is how they were made. It was from average rating, going from 1 to 8. So the highest rated team plays the 8th highest rated team, and it 2 versus 7, 3 versus 6, 4 versus 5. And in the quarter and semifinals, there's one match, but the final will have 2 matches. So that's actually something that's important. Is instead of a 4 game, right, each player on the team playing 1 game, they'll play double the amount, and so that can give you an opportunity to make a comeback. And wow, if there's a tie, it goes down to a blitz match, and if the blitz match is drawn, an Armageddon game is played. That is, I don't know if we want to get there. That's too much pressure.
That is definitely a lot of pressure. Armageddon's stressful enough on its own. You don't need an Armageddon where your team's result also matters,
So yeah, it's actually in the blitz match with 1 player, and that's so much pressure, right? If it's blitz, all 4 of you are playing, say not my fault, it was the other person who lost. But if it's just you, like it goes from team back to individual, and that is really just tremendous pressure to deal with. So I'm not
playing
quite...
chess is already too much pressure on its own. I don't even want to talk about all the rest of it.
Yeah, and if you have the option to choose your players for that, you want to know that in advance. Like, hey, by the way, you're not just playing some 10 plus 2 games. If we tie, you're the one who's going to the blitz game. I wouldn't want to be that person, honestly.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, these groups are behind us. All 8 are done with. We saw the first 6 teams qualify earlier today. Now we just saw the final 2. It's been a lot of fun, Nemo. I've really enjoyed having the call with you. So many teams playing. There was a lot to take in, many tactics, some end games that we could learn from. Any final thoughts about what we've seen to this point?
I mean, I just want everybody to, keep in mind some of the amazing tactics we saw tonight and hopefully apply it to some of their own games. Don't forget, Puzzle Rush exists. And sometimes that's what's going to get you the win, even if your king is in the middle of the board.
That is very true. And on behalf of the team working very hard, excuse me, I can't even get my words out because I was trying to be grateful. On behalf of the team behind the scenes working very hard, FIDE, all the arbiters who are around the world doing their jobs to ensure that fair play is upheld. We're very appreciative of that. We're appreciative for our viewers, everyone who's been enjoying the shows in the chat. Of course, we have to thank the players for taking part, all the companies really putting up a good showing from all across the globe. The 8 teams, we congratulate them for moving on. We'll see them tomorrow. And just one more time, I want to thank everybody who has been so generous in their support to the charities that and the initiatives presented throughout this event. Couldn't be possible without you. There quite a large sum of money raised to this point. I'm sure more will be raised going forward. So we appreciate every cent given, and the initiatives are great. It's for players with disabilities, for the veterans of chess, and also for chess and education. So on that note, we're going to sign off. I will see you tomorrow, 7 a.m. Pacific time. So you'll not want to miss the top 8 teams duking it out for a chance to win the FIDE World Corporate Chess Challenge.
Yep.